Most people think that fasting is a longevity biohack or just meh. But what if I told you that both sides are actually wrong? Because what nobody's talking about is that some of the fasting methods are just starvation with a rebrand, whilst others are actually backed by science and really work. The problem is that most people can't tell the difference, so they either starve themselves until they turn into a hungry gremlin, guilty, or give up entirely. And they're convinced it's just another hyped up trend peddled by the fungating hemorrhoids of the influencer world who turn long-standing cultural practices and science into evangelical longevity hacks. But there's promising research on a specific type of fasting that could flip a switch in your body that most people don't even know exists. And in this video, I'm going to be breaking down every popular fasting method to show you which ones are worth your time and which ones are just glorified ways of starving yourself that will just damage your health in the long term. Speaking of starving with yourself, we're starting with the type of prolonged fast where you don't eat for 48 to 72 hours. Now, proponents of this claim it's the ultimate tool for triggering autophagy, the process by which your body recycles and repairs damaged cells. It breaks down its old damaged components inside your cell to build new, more functional ones. And autophagy literally means self-eating in Greek, which is basically what your cells are doing to help you. They'll also claim 48 to 72 hour fast can slow aging, boost metabolism, and even help fight cancer. But let's take a step back and look what the science really says. Now, most of these claims come from animal studies, and researchers have seen effects like increased autophagy or slower tumor growth in rodents, but it's a big leap to assume the same holds true for humans. When fasting has been studied in humans, like during Ramadan, there's some evidence that prolonged fasting might stimulate autophagy, reduce inflammation, and clear out old dysfunctional cells. The thing is, that's a massive might. Another study looked into the potential of fasting for improving cancer outcomes, but the results suggested that without pairing it with a balanced diet and exercise, fasting alone wasn't particularly effective for meaningful weight loss. And sure, whilst fasting can temporarily nudge your metabolism in the right direction, those benefits tend to fade as soon as you return to your usual habits. I mean, just think about it for a second. After 3 days of eating virtually nothing, how likely are you to dive into a plate of broccoli? More often than not, people end up binging on familiar foods which bring them comfort, and this could wipe out any progress they made because it's just not sustainable in the long run, and any diet that's not going to be maintained is not useful. So where does that leave us? Well, for starters, fasting for 72 hours is far from some magic fix. It's more of a short-lived experiment that often leaves you feeling exhausted and frustrated. At the end of the day, it's a method that might sound exciting in theory, but the actual experience and the results don't match the hype. It is not the miracle solution it's made out to be, and so for that, it belongs in the F tier. Oh, but we're not stopping at 72 hours. The next fasting method can drag on for 8 days. Yes, 8 full days. Welcome to water fasting. You're chugging water for days on end like it's the last precious resource left on Earth. You see, water fasting is an extreme form of the water diet that involves not consuming anything but water for a chosen length of time. This time frame can range from 1 day to several days. It claims to detox your body as you're not eating any food and drinking only water, and supposedly this is meant to allow your body to transfer energy from digestion to removing stored toxins from fat tissue, organs, and cells. But we have no human controlled trials to verify whether any of this is true. It's also meant to cure autoimmune disease. Liberal use of the word cure here. The idea is that water fast can reverse conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, and multiple sclerosis because water fasting resets the immune system by destroying and then regenerating immune cells. Yet again, the evidence is thinner than the guy who's actually been water fasting for a week. However, one small study did compare 13 healthy middle-aged men who did an 8-day water fast and men who did 2 sets of intense physical exercise. What they discovered was the water-only fasting group showed more changes in metabolism, hormones, and immunity. A study review of water prolonged fasting suggested that it could be a moderately safe diet therapy and it could lead to meaningful weight loss of over 5% in days or weeks. But this weight drop is mostly your body panic dumping water and glycogen rather than long-term fat loss. So unfortunately, no, you're not suddenly a fat burning machine. You're just a dehydrated husk who thinks they're one. That's why for the torture, in my opinion, of drinking only water for more than 2 days to feel any potential benefits, water fasting has earned its spot in the D tier. Again, any benefits I just described are just me covering the research. I do not recommend water fasting in any way, shape, or form. Especially because the research suggests it doesn't play nice with my favorite toy, the gut microbiome. And as with any medical condition, be led by your doctor, not influence. This is not medical advice. The next fasting method means you don't need to starve yourself for days on end. You can eat and drink something other than tap water and fresh air for breakfast. And that's why, unlike the other two methods before it, this fasting method actually works with plenty of studies behind it. It's called 16-8 time-restricted eating. Time-restricted means that you're eating your daily calorie intake, but you're limited to a consistent time frame. Now, the 16-8 method, you specifically fast for 16 hours and you eat within an 8-hour time frame. That 16-hour window is supposedly long enough to convince your liver it's finally allowed to stop hoarding glycogen and potentially shift to using fat for energy. But how much our glycogen stores are actually empty is different for everyone. It varies based on your activity level, fitness, meals, and individual metabolism, which is why someone whose cardio is simply walking to the mailbox and whose diet looks like a gas station clearance aisle is unlikely to meaningfully touch their glycogen in 16 hours unless they're using something extreme like this fasting method. Now, one study showed this 16-8 fasting method could help with weight loss, improve insulin sensitivity, and balance hunger-related hormones. But they also mentioned many clinical trials have failed to show the same level of improvement with the 16-8 method over any classic caloric restriction. However, studies do suggest that combined with caloric intake restriction, 16-8 fasting is a potential strategy for weight control in overweight or obese adults. That's why for possibly being effective at helping people with weight management, as it could help them stick to calorie restriction, and with potential benefits that don't promise to rewrite your genetic code in 72 hours, this one does get the C tier. But not for being a fasting hack. See, the real benefit of the 16-8 method is it could meaningfully help people who struggle to stop eating with clear boundaries. Those 2 a.m. fridge raids where you power scoop ice cream straight from the tub like it's performance art for your gut bacteria are way less likely to happen when you've got a hard eating cutoff, because it gives you a set time for eating and a set time for putting the fork down. It creates structure where people most need it, when the closest thing they have to structure is knowing which Taco Bell has the shortest line at 11 p.m. and planning their route accordingly. Next one, we're back to weird fasting hacks that sound like they were invented by someone who hates food and joy in equal measure. OMAD. An OMAD lets you eat, but only in a 1-hour time slot. Now, my Indian grandmother would call this an insult to hospitality and probably get the slipper treatment. But you see, OMAD stands for 1 meal a day diet, and it's considered a type of intermittent fasting. It switches between periods throughout the day in which you can eat anything and periods in which you don't eat at all. Because you're not eating for most of the day, it's meant to help you lose weight by forcing your body to burn fat. The idea is that a 23-hour daily fast is long enough to deplete your glycogen stores, so you enter a steady fat burning and autophagy state every single day. But the fact is, it's no more effective than a calorie deficit. Even if the OMAD diet makes you feel hungrier, it's unlikely to lead to more weight loss, and no studies have looked into its safety either. Studies do report a small number of adverse effects that typically include hunger, obviously, headaches, slight dizziness, or gastrointestinal upset. Sounds like a dream to me. Now, let's say by some miracle from the weight loss gods, you don't eat the entire Walmart cereal aisle, 3 frozen pizzas, and whatever's left in the fridge during your OMAD window. Who am I kidding? Eat here, deservedly so. It doesn't seem performance friendly, especially if you're training hard and need consistent fuel throughout the day, or if you happen to have that hour close to bedtime and you risk ruining your sleep. If you do want to do the OMAD properly, this hopefully shouldn't come as a surprise, but make sure the meal you eat is nutritionally dense with enough protein, healthy fats, carbohydrates, fiber, all that good stuff. OMAD is an excuse to host your own private mukbang every night whilst you're demolishing an entire pot of butter chicken, like you're personally avenging every meal you miss that day. Next, we have a fasting method I was questioning about even putting on the list. Unlike OMAD, this fasting method is proven to work in a clinical setting with doctors. Now, before I reveal it to you, do not try this at home without clinical supervision. It's this high up the list because it's been used by doctors to help people lose weight in multiple studies, and it's called the Protein Sparing Modified Fast, or PSMF. The PSMF is designed for rapid weight loss, which is medical speak for we're putting you on a diet that would make a monk's meal plan look indulgent. Now, if that doesn't scare you, continue on, because it includes medical, nutrition, and lifestyle support to help you reach a healthy weight set by your doctor and dietitian. It works by eliminating all carbs and added fats in your diet, which leads to ketosis. And ketosis is a metabolic process when your body uses fat as its main fuel source, when normally it uses glucose as its main energy source. The PSMF fast does this by giving the person around 800 calories a day. Now, this is a severe calorie deficit, and when done for a long period of time, this can lead to your HPA axis going into overdrive, which is your stress response system, and this can even cause menstruation to stop by shutting down your reproductive hormones, also known as hypothalamic amenorrhea. Mind you, this is not uncommon in female athletes who have a super strict regimen and multiple stressors in the body. Now, in the PSMF, these calories are only focused on protein with 1.2 to 1.5 grams per kilo of their body weight each day. The high protein is to make sure your body doesn't go into a catabolic state, which means it's burning muscle, not fat. Studies show it can be an effective method for rapid weight loss in adults with severe obesity, but they also showed that whilst it helps people to quickly lose weight in the first 6 months, only 33% of patients manage to keep it off long term. So being a clinically proven medical way to lose weight, not another viral TikTok that promises to be the biological equivalent of the Holy Grail whilst actually being the biological equivalent of a dumpster fire, PSMF earns its place in the A tier from a science perspective. But for simple sustainability and day-to-day life, always F tier, because this is not feasible in real world settings. Now, for the biohackers in the back who think they can go full send on medical protocols with a YouTube video and a prayer, this is not some fasting hack you can do at home for shits and giggles. Simply put, most people won't have access to this because it's literally done under lab supervision with professional guidance. It's a clinical intervention for weight loss, so think of it more like a weight loss drug like Ozempic than some weird health hack. Our next fasting method still lets you eat something other than a sad protein shake, and that's the only good news out of the way. Because most people will still use this fasting method as an excuse to demolish an entire pizza at 9 AM and wonder why they feel absolute garbage by noon. It's called early time restricted eating, or ETRE. With ETRE, you consume your calories early in the day and fast for the remainder of the day. It's a form of intermittent fasting that confines you to eating in a short window of around 4 to 10 hours in the morning. The idea is that eating early aligns with your circadian rhythm, which is your body's internal clock, and it works with your circadian rhythm by limiting eating to a set window each day to improve metabolism. Studies show it was more effective for losing weight and improving blood pressure than eating over a window of 12 or more hours. But it isn't clear if the extra 2.3 kilograms of weight loss came from fat or not, and some of the extra weight loss could have been water. And some studies say it could have been lean mass, or it could have just been your soul leaving your body. Either way, it's hard to tell. Another study showed it could lower blood sugar levels throughout the day because it made blood sugar more stable with fewer spikes and dips, as well as reducing fasting blood sugar and insulin. Still, researchers didn't know if this was because of the fasting length or the meal timing. That's why for the people who don't end up ambushing an entire sleeve of Oreos at 2 AM, early time-restricted eating goes in the B tier. You will probably need to meal prep if you want to do it seriously, but I do think there is serious value in aligning your food intake and digestive patterns with your biological clock, but it needs to be done properly. Have your breakfast, lunch, and dinner ready to go in the morning so you're not tempted to skip meals and break the fast. Now, this is for the 1 in a million unicorn who has their life together enough to eat all their meals before noon, but for the rest of us degenerates who barely remember to drink water, I wouldn't recommend it. Now, in A tier, we have our penultimate fasting method that I might actually recommend because it's been proven to work better than a calorie deficit in some cases. It's one you can try without a doctor standing over you making sure you don't accidentally turn yourself into a biological Tamagotchi you forgot to feed. The 5-2 method, also known as twice a week fasting. Now, with the 5-2 method, for 2 days a week, you eat very little, but for the other 5 days, you eat a typical amount of calories. Or in the less extreme cases, you eat a typical diet in 1 day, and only about 25% of your typical calories the next day. It was originally made popular by Dr. Michael Mosley's book, The Fast Diet. This is the method he claimed changed his life. Now, when researchers stress tested the 5-2 method, they discovered a problem. They found people were absolutely demolishing everything in sight on the non-fast days like they'd just been set loose at a golden corral with a personal vendetta against the buffet trays. In short, they were binging on those non-fast days to make up for the deficit. But it's not all doom and gloom. A 2022 meta-analysis concluded that the 5-2 fasting is comparable to caloric restriction and a promising alternative for weight loss. Interestingly, this study also showed that the 5-2 method had the highest effectiveness for weight loss, followed by calorie restriction and time-restricted eating. So for being proven by research that isn't only done on lab rats and for showing the most most promising effects as a fasting method, the 5-2 method is going into our S tier. It's a fasting method you could actually stick to with consistency, unlike the rest of them. At the end of the day, in my opinion, this is still an extreme way of fasting and should be monitored closely, especially if the days you don't eat have a steep caloric deficit. You're more likely to pig out on anything that's at least 2% edible. But the real S tier for fasting is having an early dinner at maybe 6 or 7 p.m. and a late breakfast the next morning at 9 or 10 a.m., which is roughly a 15-hour fast. This helps to activate your migrating motor complex, the MMC, which is basically your gut's self-cleaning system, an internal biological Roomba. But your MMC only activates when you haven't eaten for roughly 3 to 4 hours. So every time you snack, it resets the clock and the cleaning crew never gets to do its job. That's why it's better to avoid snacking in the day constantly grazing, so your migrating motor complex in your intestines can activate and clean up any food debris and prevent bacterial overgrowth. The bottom line is, fasting is just like the Tinder date that somehow catfished you into believing she looked just like Jennifer Aniston. Sounds nice from a distance, but it's not all it's cracked up to be. Because nothing will compete with building solid health foundations. Especially not glorified malnutrition that only lets you drink water infused with cucumber for 3 days. And if you want more unfiltered and slightly unhinged medical breakdowns, join my newsletter. It's free, science-backed, and rammed full of dark humor like your toilet after you thought ordering that extra spicy vindaloo at 11 p.m. wouldn't have its drawbacks. Links below. I'm curious, have you tried any of those fasting methods that we've spoken about? Let me know in the comments. I'm Dr. Curran. Take care, you strange skin suits.